topic is spirituality and self-esteem, and we're talking to Dr. CPoe2. And of course, Dr. Poe, let's allow you during this second segment to expand upon some of the information that you were giving us at the end of the last segment. And of course, you have such a wide variety of information, and you're able to present it in such a way that I think it's more understandable from your perspective. So let's give you an opportunity to continue that.
I grade self-esteem in terms of low self-esteem in terms of mildly low, moderately low, severely low, and extremely low. There's an author, and I can't think of his name now, that's come up with the concept of no self-esteem. His point of view is that some people's self-esteem is so low that for all practical purposes they have no self-esteem, okay? Let me just say that people who have a low self-esteem problem, particularly if it's severe or extreme, oftentimes are characterized by what I call paradoxical behavior. Now, paradoxical behavior is where I am very fearful, but I act very aggressive, okay? I act as if I'm fearless, all right? People whose self-esteem is very, very low, who don't feel good about themselves, often exaggerate how confident they are, or they act as if they're extremely confident, all right? So we see this paradoxical kind of behavior, which often indicates that the person has a severe self-esteem problem. The bully is one example, okay? And we've got a problem now in our public school system in terms of bullying behavior. Oftentimes, the bully has been abused severely or severely neglected in his or her childhood or adolescence, and so has become extremely fearful, fearful of being hurt. But because the self-esteem is so very, very low, they act as if they're unafraid of anybody, all right?
Don't care.
And they act as if they don't care about being hurt, they don't care about anybody, and their behavior is extremely aggressive and often violent, okay? And that's because the self-esteem has been damaged so severely that it's severely low or extremely low. And so very often, people who have an extremely damaged self-esteem will manifest what I call the very opposite of the kind of feelings that are really going on in that individual. Okay? And so I think that's a very important point that we make. Also, let me just share this. People who have low self-esteem also have a problem with feeling very angry and often very hostile towards themselves, towards God, and towards others. Now, this is a very important point because we've come to understand in medical research that hostility seems to be a risk factor that contributes to coronary artery disease, heart attack, hypertension. And so people who have very low self-esteem then, because of having a problem of unresolved hostility towards themselves, God, and others, are much more prone to develop certain chronic physical diseases, diabetes mellitus, coronary artery disease, renal disease, stroke, and I believe even cancer, all right? So having a very low self-esteem not only puts you at risk of engaging in what I call self-defeating behaviors, all right, but it also puts you at risk of developing some of the chronic physical diseases that are associated with a lot of suffering and premature death. And of course, it's also true, if a person has very low self-esteem, they're also at risk of manifesting and developing problems with depression, or chronic anxiety, sexual disorders, and so on.
Well, and certainly, Dr. Poe, I understand what you meant when you said that self-esteem is much more than whether you've got high self-esteem or low self-esteem. I mean, it almost colors almost every aspect of an individual's life.
Yes, yes. And I think that's why it's much more of a spiritual problem than psychological. It's more spiritual than biological. And of course, to some extent, it's a mystery. But we do know that it's a very important reality. And also, I'm convinced, based on my experience, that how I treat other people, if I treat you with hostility, if I take advantage of you, if I'm abusive of you, what that does is it damages my self-esteem. It damages my positive image of myself. That's one of the, so you see, impairment of self-esteem then serves as a kind of a brake on hostile behavior or on taking advantage of people. On the other hand, if I treat you with respect, if I treat you the way I want you to treat me, which is biblical, right? That's the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. And this is what the Bible encourages. Then I add to my self-esteem. I improve my self-esteem. You see? So the self-esteem then, our self-esteem is a very sensitive barometer of how we are treating other people. Okay? I can't feel good about myself and mistreat you. I don't care how much I smile or act as if I'm happy. If I'm mistreating another person, then that's going to damage my self-esteem, and I'm more likely going to feel the grief that's related to that.
In other words, subconsciously, you can't have high self-esteem or feel good about yourself, even though you try to convince yourself from a conscious level that you are a great person, etc. But subconsciously, you know. Is that what we're saying? There's an innate thing within all of us.
Yes, I'm saying that if I mistreat you, that causes me to feel bad about myself within myself. I may not become conscious of it for a while, but when I hurt you, I'm also hurting me. I'm hurting my image, my positive image of myself, and my good feelings about myself. I cannot mistreat people consistently. I cannot take advantage of people, for example, in the marketplace. I can't overcharge people for goods and services day in and day out and still feel good about myself. Now, let me share this with you. Oftentimes, low self-esteem will be covered over by attitude of arrogance, an attitude of pridefulness. It will be covered over by what I call a superficial self-confidence. You'd be surprised to know how many people who have very high incomes, who have high positions, people with advanced degrees, people whom you think are doing so very, very well, because they exude confidence. They exude confidence, but in reality feel very, very bad about themselves on the inside. Why? Because usually they have themselves first and God on the back burner. Usually they are engaging in behaviors that involve them taking advantage of other people.
And of course, this is not to paint an organization like Enron with a black brush, but it does indicate that if individuals are aware of what is going on, that they can't feel very well about themselves or their organization. Is that what we're saying?
Yes. In other words, if you're mistreating other people, it's hurting you, whether you're conscious of it or not.
Very good. Of course, let us take this second commercial break, Dr. Poe, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. And self-esteem.